The idea that Jesus wants us to be wealthy may seem contradictory to traditional Christian teachings, which often emphasize humility, simplicity, and detachment from material possessions. However, a closer examination of biblical scripture reveals that Jesus' message is not about rejecting wealth altogether, but rather about using our resources wisely and living a life of purpose in abundance. In the book of Matthew, Jesus teaches his disciples about the importance of storing up treasures in heaven rather than on earth. While this passage is often interpreted as a warning against materialism, it can also be seen as an encouragement to invest in things that truly matter, such as relationships, personal growth, and spiritual development. Jesus is not saying that we should be poor or destitute, but rather that we should prioritize our values and allocate our resources accordingly. The concept of wealth in the Bible is not limited to financial riches. In fact, the Greek word platos, which is often translated as wealth or riches, can also refer to spiritual abundance, joy, and fulfillment. When Jesus says, "I have come that they may have life, and have it to the full," John 10:10, he is promising his followers a life of purpose, meaning, and satisfaction. This kind of wealth is not measured by bank accounts or material possessions, but by the quality of our relationships, the depth of our faith, and the impact we have on the world around us. One of the most significant barriers to wealth, in this sense, is a poverty mindset. When we believe that we are limited by our circumstances, lack of resources, or past experiences, we can become stuck in a cycle of scarcity and fear. Jesus, on the other hand, teaches us to have faith in God's abundance and provision. His feeding of the 5,000 with just a few loaves of bread and some fish is a powerful illustration of this principle. By trusting in God's power and generosity, we can overcome our own limitations and achieve great things. Furthermore, Jesus' teachings on wealth are often aimed at challenging our cultural assumptions and values. In a society that worships wealth and status, Jesus says, "You cannot serve both God and money," Luke 16:13. This is not a rejection of wealth per se, but a call to reevaluate our priorities and allegiances. When we prioritize God's kingdom and values, we begin to see the world in a different light. We recognize that true wealth is not just about accumulating riches, but about living a life of purpose, serving others, and making a positive impact on our communities. In the book of Proverbs, we read, "Wealth and riches are in his house, and his righteousness endures forever," Proverbs 15:6. This passage suggests that wealth and righteousness are not mutually exclusive, but rather intertwined. When we live a life of integrity, honesty, and compassion, we are more likely to experience financial blessing and abundance. This is not because God rewards us with wealth for our good behavior, but because living a virtuous life tends to produce positive outcomes and consequences. Ultimately, Jesus wants us to be wealthy because he wants us to live a life of freedom, joy, and purpose. When we are financially stable and secure, we are better able to pursue our passions, serve others, and fulfill our calling. We are also more resilient in the face of challenges and setbacks, and more able to weather the storms of life. By trusting in God's abundance and provision, we can break free from the cycle of scarcity and fear, and live a life of true wealth and prosperity. In conclusion, Jesus' teachings on wealth are not about rejecting material possessions or accumulating riches, but about living a life of purpose, values, and spiritual abundance. By trusting in God's power and generosity, we can overcome our limitations, achieve great things, and experience true wealth and prosperity. As we prioritize God's kingdom and values, we begin to see the world in a different light, and recognize that true wealth is not just about accumulating riches, but about living a life of purpose, serving others, and making a positive impact on our communities.